Today we are going to talk about chronic leukemia. First, this diagram shows the normal hematopoiesis. The normal hematopoiesis starts by the hematopoietic pluripotent stem cell, which gives rise to either the common myeloid progenitor or the common lymphoid progenitor. The common myeloid progenitor cell is the cell which starts to give rise to the committed stem cells, which by its turn give rise to the red cells, the platelets, the granulocytes, basophils, eosinophils, neutrophils, and monocytes. While the common lymphoid progenitor gives rise to the three lymphocytes B, T, and natural killer cells. So, what's leukemia? Leukemia is a malignant disease of hematopoietic tissue. It's characterized by accumulation of abnormal white blood cells. These white blood cells are malignant in nature, are clonal. It starts to be formed in the bone marrow, and by its turn affects the bone marrow function and causes bone marrow failure. And then starts to raise in the peripheral circulation, causes the leukocytosis, and it might infiltrate the reticuloendothelial system organs like the liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. Might be in some types of leukemias infiltrate the CNS. But you should know that not all the cases of acute leukemia should present with leukocytosis. Some cases of acute leukemia, which we call leukemic leukemia, might present with leukopenia. What is the etiology of leukemia? All of these causes are theoretical. Some cases might be caused by viruses like Epstein-Barr virus, which might lead to Hodgkin lymphoma, Burkitt lymphoma, human T-cell leukemia lymphoma virus, HTLV, which give rise to some subtypes of T-cell lymphoma, the ionizing radiation and the benzene exposure, some genetic disorders like Down syndrome and Fanconi anemia. Down gives might give rise to ALL, and Fanconi anemia might give rise to acute myeloid leukemia. What is the pathogenesis of leukemia? First, we have transformation to malignancy, which starts by only one single cell, and this occurs as a result of any genetic mutation, any cause from which the ones we have mentioned, which starts to give a clonal malignant cell, and this clonal malignant cell starts to have or gain uncontrolled proliferation with stunted differentiation. Okay, and this differentiation grade is according to the type of leukemia, either it's acute or chronic. So after that, we have this clonal expansion of these malignant cells. So it divides to a similar cells, okay, and these cells start to highly infiltrate the marrow and replace its normal cells by these immature cells, and this ends up by mostly by cytopenia, and as we have mentioned, might end by infiltration. And if it's going to happen at this step in the myeloblast early in the promyelocyte, so this is going to be an acute myeloid leukemia. If it occurs in later stages, which is still immature, but with more shift to the right, so in the myelocyte and metamyelocyte, okay, this might cause a chronic myeloid leukemia. So if we are more shifting to the left, when you go higher, there's shifting to the left. We go down, it's more shifting to the right towards the maturity. So shifting upward to the left is with acute leukemia, and downward is towards the chronic leukemia. So acute leukemia consists of immature cells, but chronic leukemia consists of more mature cells. Okay. What are the types of chronic leukemia? We have two types. Either it's a chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and you have to take care that chronic lymphoblastic leukemia is long term, because in chronic, as we have mentioned in the previous slide, that in the chronic leukemias we are having a mature cells, more mature cells, and in the chronic lymphocytic leukemia specifically we are having a small mature lymphocyte, so it's not lymphoblast. So we have to say it's not a chronic lymphoblastic leukemia. It arises from the lymphatic series, as we have mentioned, and the chronic myeloid leukemia, which arises from the myeloid. We are going to start by the chronic lymphocytic leukemia. What's chronic lymphocytic leukemia? Chronic lymphocytic leukemia is defined as neoplasm, which is comprised of, as we have mentioned, a small mature B lymphocytes and clonal lymphocytes. So it's already mature cells, okay? But the problem with this cells is it's a clonal one, okay? It's a malignant cells having the malignant criteria. It will continue to proliferate and cause leukocytosis. So CLL is the most common of type of the chronic lymphoid leukemias, which is the chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Its peak incidence is from 60 to 80. Actually, we started to see chronic lymphocytic leukemia in the younger ages. Might be it's not that common below 40 years, but we started to find it at younger ages. So above the 40 up to 60 is a big number of cases now. It's characterized by chronic persistence, clonal lymphocytosis, which later in the disease might infiltrate organs. So it starts by the lymphocytosis, which appears to be B clonal lymphocytosis. What's the pathology of this leukemia? Being more mature, the abnormal lymphocytes leave the marrow. When this lymphocytes, which is clonal ones, the malignant ones, started to become mature, it starts to leave the marrow and then invade the peripheral blood, leading to this lymphocytosis. Then these abnormal lymphocytes start to invade the endothelial system, spreading to lymph nodes, and might be to the spleen or to the liver, causing splenomegaly and hepatomegaly. Later in the disease, the abnormal hematopoiesis and this accumulation of lymphocytes in the marrow and this heavily filtrated marrow might end up by gaining cytopenia. It might be anemia or thrombocytopenia. And also these clonal malignant lymphocytes is not functioning well. So this patient might be having a problem with its immunoglobulins and might be having hypogammaglobulinemia and impaired immune system, which might let these patients are more prone to infections. So also, in some cases of CLL, you need to know that there is immune disturbance, so these antibodies secreted might gain an abnormal function and autoimmune activity and attack the patient's white blood, red blood cells, or the patient's platelets, so it might end with autoimmune hepatic anemia or idiopathic thrombocytopenia, or sometimes pure red cell aplasia. What are the clinical features of this disease, the chronic lymphocytic leukemia? First, as I told you, it occurs in the elderly, started to be in younger age. It's below 40, it's considered to be rare. For the it have slight male predominance. What is the presentation of the patient? Most of the patient early in the disease don't have any symptoms. So they might be discovered accidentally. He's going to have any elective surgery or going traveling abroad, whatever the cause, the patient made the patient to do a complete blood count, and he discovered accidentally is having this leukocytosis. So many patients might be asymptomatic. Other patients might present with what we call the non-specific symptoms like anorexia, weight loss, fatigability, or might be more specifically P symptoms or the constitutional manifestations, which is characterizing the malignant hematological disease. So I think you have passed by these P symptoms before, which is a significant loss of weight, more than 60% of body weight in the more than 10% of the body weight in the previous 6 months. without any explained cause, low grade fever, bone aches, unexplained fatigability, drenching, significant drenching night sweats. All of these three symptoms might the patient present with them, and many patients or the typical presentation for CLL is the lymphadenopathy, the enlargement of the lymph node. And it appears to be mostly asymmetrical enlargement of the lymph node. It might be generalized, and the lymph nodes are for sure is not tender. And in this type of leukemia, it's mostly discrete, not mated, and are soft in consistency. Then the patient might present in later stages by splenomegaly or hepatomegaly. As we have mentioned, these patients are more prone to recurrent infections, either by bacterial fungal or late in the disease, of course, become more aggressive and disease infiltrates more the marrow. And in later stages, the patient might present with anemia and thrombocytopenia, either from the infiltration, and in some cases, it might appear early when this patient is having, as we have mentioned, an autoimmune hemolytic anemia or ITP associated with the CLL. This picture shows a female with bilateral symmetrical lymphadenopathy. What's my laboratory approach for this case? First, you are going to order a complete blood count if the patient came to you with lymphadenopathy or these symptoms and signs, or might be the patient is presenting to you already with this CBC as it might be covered accidentally. You are going to find the patient is having leukocytosis, and the differential leukocytic count for this white blood cell is going to be lymphocytosis, and more specifically, it's an absolute lymphocytosis. And what we mean by absolute is that it's more than 5,000. So the normal total leukocytic count is between 4,000 to 11,000, and in this case, it's going to be increased up to 300,000 or 400,000, might be up to these very high numbers, hyperleukocytosis. And what is the pathognomonic sign in the CBC or in the differential leukocytic count? It must be having absolute lymphocytosis more than 5,000, the lymphocytic count. The patient might present by anemia, as we have mentioned, might be autoimmune or any other causes like hypersplenism, iron deficiency anemia, or as we have mentioned, in the late stages of the disease when the marrow become healthy, infiltrated by lymphocytes, it might cause an anemia. Also, the same for thrombocytopenia, either immune or related to the bone marrow failure. I mean, the bone marrow infiltration, sorry. If we have ordered a blood film, manual blood film, to look at the morphology of the lymphocytes, it's going to be a small lymphocyte, it's going to be mature, it's going to appear to be basket cells or smudged. This is something artifactual, okay? And it's pathognomonic for the small mature lymphocytes of the CLL. If you are going to do bone marrow aspirates and biopsy, and this is considered now mandatory to be done in case of CLL, as it's a prognostic, considered part from the prognostic markers, because according to the infiltration of lymphocytes, if it's focal or diffuse, it's going to be worse. The infiltration for diagnosis is more than 30% lymphocyte. How to confirm the clonality or that this clonal lymphocytes are a chronic lymphocytic leukemia? This is going to happen if you are going to do this flow cytometry by these markers. So the small mature lymphocytes of the CLL appears to be expressing CD19, and for sure it might should be having a kappa or lambda restriction. Okay, so this light chain restriction is one of the characteristic of the clonal cells, clonal lymphocytes. So we are going to be having kappa or lambda restriction. So that's a malignant lymphocyte. It's a B by CD19 positive. How to know it is more specifically a CLL1? So we are going to find we are having three from this scoring system is present in this table, up to five. Five, I'm sure. Four is 4 and 5 is considered sure for CLL, and 3 is going to be considered a case of CLL, but below 3, you need to do more investigations to know what type of lymphoproliferative disorder you might be having. So, what's this calling system? We are having CD5 positive, CD23 positive, and we are having the negative CD79P, CD22 at NC7, and weak positive surface immunoglobulin. What is the staging of CLL? Staging is an important part of the chronic lymphocytic leukemia because it helps me later in the treatment of the disease and the detection of the prognosis of this disease. So it's based on the hematological changes. We have two types of staging, either the Rai classification or the Binet classification. For the Rai, we have 5 stages: 0 stage, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. For the 0 stage, is just presenting with the absolute lymphocytosis, which we have mentioned more than 5,000. So that's the only presentation, and that is the presentation with the patient should show so that I can diagnose that he is having a CLL. So this patient is mostly not having anything except for absolute lymphocytosis and no other problems. You go for stage 1, the patient starts to be having lymphadenopathy. Stage 2 starts to spread to the spleen, so is having splenomegaly, even with or without lymphadenopathy. If the patient starts to have splenomegaly or hepatomegaly, I mean, then we go for stage 3 and 4. This is the stage characterized, or later stage and disease characterized by the cytopenias. For 3, the patient starts to be having anemia less than 10 grams per deciliter, and for thrombocytopenia less than 100,000. We go for Bini. Bini is characterized to 3 stages, A and B and C. For O, we are having less than 3 lymphatic lesions. And we don't have anemia or thrombocytopenia. For B, we are having more than 3 lymphatic lesions, and for C, we are having either anemia or thrombocytopenia. Here you go for the treatment of the case of chronic lymphocytic leukemia. You need to know that not all the patients of chronic lymphocytic leukemia are going to be treated. So this is an important and assuring part of this disease when you start discussing the strategy of treatment or your plan with your patient. You need to assure him and take or fulfill a very detailed history, because the cases of CLL which are not having significant, which not having any symptoms, asymptomatic. So this means they are not having these symptoms which we have mentioned before, no symptoms, and not having a significant lymphadenopathy, which means it's not more than 10 centimeter, or we are not having a significant splenomegaly more than 6 centimeter, or we are not having any significant cytopenia like anemia and thrombocytopenia. So, or any pressure symptoms caused by this enlarged lymph nodes. So we are not going to treat this patient. We are going to adopt the strategy of wait and see. So you are going just to follow up the CBC of the patient and wait if any one of these criteria starts to appear, or if the patient starts to be having adopting time for his absolute lymphocytic count starts to be doubled rapidly in 2 months, in 6 months. So that's going to be considered an indication for treatment in some cases. Then, if the patient is indicated at the start or later in the stage, what's going to be our treatment? So, SCLL is not that curative disease, okay? So we have to adapt the strategy according to the patient age. Specific, it's a common disease in the elderly, so there's a strategy of slow no go, or slow go, or go go. So it's according to the age of the patient, you are going to adapt your protocol of treatment. So for sure, we are going to give the patient chemotherapy, but there is alkylating agents. We could start by the clonazepam, which is the less aggressive chemotherapy, which might be tolerated by the older patients, or fludarabine, which is a more aggressive therapy for the younger ones, more fit. Now there is the targeted therapy, which is rituximab, which is a monoclonal antibody which attacks the B cell by many mechanisms. Okay, it's an important part of the treatment, and the steroid which might be used for treatment of autoimmune anemia or ITP, and might be in some cases we might use radiotherapy if there is a huge bulky lymph nodes, and the stem cell transplantation. Its rule comes only if the patient is having a refractory disease from the start or being relapsed after treatment. Second, we go to the chronic myeloid leukemia. What is the definition of chronic myeloid leukemia? It's a clonal myeloproliferation characterized by striking overproduction of granulocytes. So it's considered a myeloproliferative disorder. We have a classification for the myeloproliferative disorders. One of them is the chronic myeloid leukemia, and the other ones are the polycythemia vera, essential thrombocythemia, myelofibrosis, primary myelofibrosis, and the chronic myeloid leukemia. The chronic myeloid leukemia can occur at in both sexes. Okay, there is no predominance. It comes at any age, but the median age is 45 years. It's not common in pediatrics. Very rare to have in pediatrics. What is the pathology and the molecular basis for CML? CML is characterized by excessive production of granulocytes. The neoplastic clone include also RBCs, megakaryocytes, and monocytes. That's because we have mentioned at the start that the hematopoietic stem cell give rise to the common myeloid progenitor, and this common myeloid progenitor gives us the RBCs, the platelets, the granulocytes, eosinophils, and basophils, and monocytes. So this part is what is affected here. If you are going to do bone marrow, you're going to find that the bone marrow is very high procedure, is actively active, and that's why we are having increased proliferation in the granulocytes. The CML clone can progress from just being a chronic phase to accelerated phase, and then ends up by might be a plastic crisis, which is means turns to be an acute leukemia. The molecular basis for CML depends on the Philadelphia chromosome. This Philadelphia chromosome is a genetic abnormality present in about 95% of cases of CML, and if it appears to be negative, it's considered a typical CML, and you start to search for any other myeloproliferative neoplasm other than the CML, and then would be diagnosed by exclusion at the end. So it's a very common one, and without it, you cannot be sure that this case is a case of CML. It results from what, as we can see here in this diagram, we are having chromosome 9 and chromosome 22. So that's what we call translocation 922. So we have a problem that we having here in the chromosome 9, which is the longer one, and the chromosome 2, which is the shorter one. That chromosome 9 is having a part called the epsilon APL. This part is translocated and comes to chromosome 22, and a part from chromosome 22 goes for the chromosome 9. This is what we call reciprocal translocation. So this part epsilon goes for the PCR part on the chromosome 22 and goes what we call PCR able rearrangement. And this PCR able rearrangement is present in the chromosome 29, and now the chromosome 22. I'm sorry, and this chromosome 22 is called the Philadelphia chromosome. So what is that Philadelphia chromosome? It's the abnormal chromosome 22, which attains the PCR able rearrangement. Okay, fusion rearrangement. So this PCR able fusion gene start to be having a tyrosine kinase activity. Okay, so it results in the production of a protein called tyrosine kinase, which by its turn starts to activate the intracellular signaling pathways like the JAK-STAT pathway, and ends up by increasing the proliferation and the decrease of the apoptosis of the granulocytes. What is the presentation of this case? The cases of CML, it looks to appear like the case of CLN at this point, that many cases come just discovered accidentally. So it's asymptomatic. Even if this patient is having a spleen, it might not be huge enough, specifically at the earlier stages of the disease, to cause the patient any complaint. So the patient might present by discovered accidental disease, or the patient might present with non-specific symptoms, including the constitutional symptoms. A big part of the patient present with splenomegaly because it might be causing the patient early satiety, dragging, having this heavy dragging pain. So the patient go to investigate what is the cause for this pain, and he discovers that he is having a splenomegaly. So this is a common presentation to the case of CML, as CML is considered one from the cause of huge splenomegaly. So this might be a big problem the patient might present with that from the start. As we go for progression of the disease, or the patient didn't discover this early, he might present with the symptoms and signs of the accelerated phase or the plastic phase. So he starts to be having anemia and thrombocytopenia, so having bleeding tendency and anemia symptoms. Once you work up or laboratory investigations for this case, you are going to order a complete blood count, and you are going to find the patients having a leukocytosis ranging from 50 up to 200,000 or much more. It's characterized by hyperleukocytosis. If you ordered a blood film, you are going to find that we are having the whole or the bad myeloid markers are increased, including the, as we have mentioned before, we are having the competitive cell, which gives rise to the granulocyte. It gives rise to, after the myeloblast, which is the part present in the acute leukemia. So after this start maturation to myelocyte, metamyelocyte, and the neutrophils. So these the myeloid markers and is increased, not the myeloblast. So myeloblast starts to appear when we are progressing with the disease, going towards the immaturity for accelerated and plastic phase. And we are having basophilia and eosinophilia. The lymphocytes is not affected here, or even the monocytes. The bone marrow is going to show a hyperciliary marrow, specifically. Here we go for the point of the Philadelphia chromosome, which we have mentioned should be positive in about 95% of cases. That's why you have to, if you are now suspecting CML because you have found leukocytosis and the differential appears to be having the myeloid markers increased, the neutrophils, the myelocyte, and metamyelocyte. So you have to confirm this by ordering either the conventional cytogenetic karyotyping or the FISH in cytohybridization or the reverse transcriptase PCR to see if this patient or confirm is having this Philadelphia chromosome. If the patient is presenting in the accelerated phase or starts to be progressing during its therapy, you are going to find that we are having a significant anemia and the thrombocytopenia starts to develop. The basophil starts to increase up to 20%, which is the cutoff for diagnosis of the accelerated phase. You might find the blood cell is increasing, which is supposed to be less than 5% in the chronic phase, starts to rise from 5 up to 10 in the accelerated, and from 11 up to from 5 up to 19 in the accelerated, and above 20 in the cases of the plastic crisis. The bone marrow might show in the accelerated phase to start to be showing secondary myelofibrosis. I know abnormal karyotypes might appear by the typing. If the patient progresses to plastic crisis, you are going to see the picture of acute leukemia. This acute leukemia might be acute myeloid or acute lymphoblastic leukemia because the clonal affection or the disease starts in the chronic myeloid leukemia at the level of the stem cell, okay, of the hematopoietic stem cell. That's why it might, when it progresses, give rise either to myeloblast or lymphoblast. How to treat these cases? You need to know that the era of tyrosine kinase inhibitors, which happened in the CML, made this disease to be the first disease to be treated by medical treatment and giving a very high life expectancy in between the whole leukemias. acute or chronic. So in the past, they have to use chemotherapy, like cytarabine, alkylating agents, might be interferon, the hydroxyurea as a cytoreductive therapy. They use this therapy in the past, but now the chronic. But this started in the 2000s. That they found the PCR-able tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which acts on the tyrosine kinase protein, which is uh, already made by the PCR-able fusion gene, which we have mentioned in the pathogenesis. So it disables this tyrosine kinase, so it ends the sequelae of the proliferation and stunted and the stunted apoptosis. So it really made a big difference in the treatment of CML. So the patient now are receiving just these tyrosine kinase inhibitors, which is an oral drug, but they have to receive it for life, because even if the patient starts taking it and he enters incomplete response, he's still having residual leukemic stem cells. That's why the patient has to continue it for life, although there is significant trials now for discontinuing the TKIs, specifically when you enter a deep response, which we call treatment-free remissions. But this is still ongoing, and till now you have to put your patient on the therapy for life. We could use the hydroxyurea as a start of the treatment to decrease the number of the white blood cells. What are the TKIs? We have the first simulation, which is the imatinib, which is called the trade name Glevic, and it's found to inhibit progression of CML in the majority of patients. Then we go for the second line and third generation of the TKI, which is the dasatinib and neratinib. If you failed the first line imatinib at the start or at any point of your treatment, you have these lines. We go for the accelerated phase. Here the patient start to be to progress to accelerated phase. You could give a higher dose of imatinib or switch to a second line of the TKIs. And these patients mostly are not going to give significant response, so you have to make allogeneic transplantation. If the patient is close to plastic crisis, so you have to treat the patient as a case of acute leukemia, either according to its AML or ALL. So you give the chemotherapy protocol according to the subtype of leukemia, and then you have to consolidate your remission by allogeneic stem cell transplant.